What happens when trust is tested in a whirlwind romance? Meet 23-year-old Elena, a budding interior designer, and 24-year-old Brandon, an ambitious graphic artist, whose shared passion ignited love only to be threatened by silence, suspicion, and a secret that changes everything. Elena was the kind of person who could walk into a room and light it up with her energy. At just 23 years old, she was already carving her path as an interior design student, balancing her passion for creativity with the rigorous demands of her university coursework. She thrived on challenges, loved brainstorming ideas, and often lost herself in the flow of designing spaces that could tell a story. Brandon, on the other hand, was equally ambitious in his field as a 24-year-old graphic designer. His talent for visual storytelling matched his calm demeanor, which was often a grounding force in their whirlwind relationship. The two had met during a university design showcase, where Brandon had been captivated by Elena's bold, innovative project. What started as casual coffee meetups to discuss design trends quickly grew into something much deeper. Their relationship, though only 4 months old, felt mature and significant. They often joked that they were two halves of a creative mind. From sketching ideas on napkins during lunch breaks to late-night calls about their career dreams, they had formed a bond that blurred the line between professional and personal. But like any passionate connection, theirs had a flip side. Beneath the smiles and stolen kisses was the unspoken reality that emotions this strong could also hurt the most. It was a Friday afternoon when Elena first mentioned the project. Her design professor had just assigned a group task with a demanding deadline, and her team decided to meet that night at a classmate's studio. The buzz of collaboration excited her. There was something magical about creating alongside peers who shared her vision. Brandon seemed supportive at first. "You'll do great," he said, giving her a kiss before they parted ways. But as the day wore on, Elena noticed a subtle change in his demeanor. His usual enthusiasm had dimmed, replaced by a quiet tension she couldn't quite place. "Don't stay out too late," he texted that evening, just as she was packing up her supplies. It was a simple message, but Elena couldn't help but feel a note of hesitation in his words. She reassured him she wouldn't be gone too long, though she knew the night might stretch further than planned. What she didn't realize was that Brandon wasn't just uneasy, he was battling his own insecurities. The thought of her out late with friends, immersed in a world that didn't include him, began to fester. As Elena headed to her group's meeting, unaware of the storm brewing in Brandon's mind, the stage was set for a night that would test their relationship in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The studio was alive with energy that night. Elena and her group spread out across the room, sketches and mood boards scattered everywhere. Laughter echoed as they debated over color palettes and layout ideas. The camaraderie fueled her excitement, and for a while she felt completely immersed in the creative flow. This was her element, collaborating, ideating, and seeing concepts take shape. But in the midst of all the activity, Elena found herself glancing at her phone. The screen remained dark. Brandon hadn't replied to her last message from earlier in the evening, heading over now. "Can't wait to show you what we come up with tomorrow." Normally, he'd respond instantly, often with words of encouragement or playful teasing. As the hours ticked by, Elena's excitement began to wane. She sent another message, "Hey, you okay? Hope you're getting some rest." No reply. Her chest tightened slightly, but she pushed the thought aside. Maybe he'd fallen asleep, she reasoned. After all, he'd mentioned he had a long day at work. Still, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Every time her phone stayed silent, it felt like a crack forming in her otherwise happy evening. Her friends noticed her checking her screen but didn't say anything. They knew how dedicated she was to Brandon, always talking about his latest projects and how much he inspired her. But tonight, his absence in her life, even just through a text, felt heavier than it should have. It was nearing midnight when Elena's anxiety truly began to set in. The studio's creative buzz had slowed as the team worked through the finer details of their project. Elena, however, struggled to focus. Her phone remained stubbornly still, and every unanswered text chipped away at her confidence. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway for some fresh air. The cold night breeze hit her face as she scrolled through her messages. She debated whether to call Brandon. Would it seem too clingy? Would he think she didn't trust him? She shook her head, annoyed at her own hesitation. Why am I overthinking this? She wondered. Taking a deep breath, she sent one more message. I'm wrapping up soon. Hope everything's okay. Miss you. The words felt like a plea. The thought of Brandon ignoring her intentionally was unthinkable. Yet the silence on the other end carried a weight she couldn't ignore. Inside, her friends were laughing over a design blunder someone had made earlier, but Elena felt miles away. She couldn't shake the unease settling in her chest. Her heart raced as she considered the possibilities. Was he upset? Angry that she was out so late? Or was it something else, something she hadn't prepared herself to confront? For the first time that night, the creative energy around her felt suffocating. She went back inside, trying to shake the worry and finish the project, but the tension between her excitement for the work and her growing fear about Brandon's silence was undeniable. By 2 a.m., the once vibrant studio had started to quiet down. The team worked on final touches, their earlier energy replaced by focused determination. But Elena was distracted, her thoughts spiraling. She stared at her phone, willing it to light up with a message from Brandon, but there was nothing. Her earlier attempts to push aside her unease had given way to full-blown worry. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. Was he asleep? Upset? Or was something else going on? The possibility of Brandon being angry with her hurt more than she cared to admit. He'd always been her cheerleader, the one person who truly understood her drive and passion. But tonight, his silence felt like a wall between them. Elena stepped away from the group and sat on the steps outside the studio. The cold air prickled her skin as she dialed Brandon's number, her fingers trembling slightly. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. And then it went to voicemail. Hey, it's me, she said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and worry. I just wanted to check in. I'll be heading home soon. Hope you're okay. Love you, she hung up, her chest tightening as the unanswered call echoed in her ears. For the rest of the night, she tried to refocus on the project, but her mind wouldn't let go of the unease. She kept replaying their last conversation, searching for any signs of tension or anger that she might have missed. Her friends noticed her withdrawn demeanor but chalked it up to the late hour. By the time the group wrapped up their work, Elena felt drained not from the project, but from the emotional roller coaster Brandon's silence had triggered. She headed home with a sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong. While Elena was pouring her energy into the project, Brandon sat alone in his apartment, his thoughts growing darker by the hour. Her absence that night gnawed at him. He felt sidelined, forgotten. The logical part of him knew Elena was just working on her project, but his emotions told a different story. Why didn't she prioritize me? Why didn't she invite me? He thought bitterly. The more he dwelled on it, the angrier he became. His phone buzzed with her texts, but he didn't open them. Instead, he poured himself another glass of whiskey, his frustration building. He didn't want to feel this way, but his insecurities wouldn't let him rest. And then, as if on cue, his phone lit up with a message from an old fling, a friend with benefits he hadn't spoken to in months. Her name on the screen was like a spark in the powder keg of his emotions. Without thinking, he replied. At first, it was casual, harmless banter. But as the conversation continued, the tone shifted. Before he fully processed what he was doing, she was at his door. Brandon told himself it was just a distraction, a way to numb the ache of feeling neglected. But deep down, he knew this wasn't about Elena's actions, it was about his inability to confront his own insecurities. As the night unfolded, Brandon's impulsive decision left a mark he couldn't erase. He convinced himself it was justified, that Elena's late night had crossed a line. But in the quiet hours that followed, even as he tried to push the guilt aside, a part of him knew he had made a mistake that could shatter everything they had built. The sun peeked through Elena's curtains as she stumbled into her apartment after a long, exhausting night. Dropping her bag by the door, she collapsed onto the couch, too drained to head straight to bed. Despite her physical fatigue, her mind was restless, Consumed by thoughts of Brandon, she decided to check her phone one last time, hoping for a message that would ease her worry. But there was still nothing. Not a single word from him. She tried to rationalize his silence. Maybe he really was asleep. Maybe his phone died, she thought. But the doubts kept creeping in. Or maybe. She stopped herself before finishing the thought. A heavy pit formed in her stomach as her fears took hold. Elena's emotions teetered between frustration and sadness. She had tried everything to reach him, texting, calling, even leaving a voicemail, and still, there was no response. Determined to understand what was going on, she decided to head to his place later in the morning. But for now, she needed rest. As she lay in bed, flashes of their last few days together played in her mind: his sudden quietness, the strange tone in his texts, the way he seemed distant before she left for the project. She wondered if she had done something wrong, completely unaware of what Brandon had been up to the night before. Across town, Brandon woke up to a mess. His apartment smelled faintly of alcohol, and his head throbbed from the night's excesses. The sight of the empty glasses and discarded clothes on the floor hit him like a punch in the gut. Next to him, the woman stirred, her presence a stark reminder of the choice he'd made in his moment of insecurity and anger. He felt sick not just physically but emotionally. The guilt was unbearable. He reached for his phone and saw Elena's unread messages and missed calls. Each one felt like a dagger. He knew she didn't deserve this, but he wasn't ready to face her yet. Brandon was torn between the shame of his actions and his resentment toward Elena for making him feel neglected, even if he knew deep down that his reaction was unjustified. Later that morning, Elena stood outside Brandon's door, her heart pounding. She'd texted him one last time before leaving her apartment: "Hey, I'm coming over. We need to talk." When he didn't reply, she decided to go anyway. She wasn't one to shy away from confrontation, especially when it came to her relationship. She knocked softly at first, but when there was no answer, she knocked harder. Finally, the door opened, and there stood Brandon, looking disheveled and unkempt. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes carried a mixture of guilt and dread. "Hey," Elena said cautiously, taking in his appearance. "What's going on? You didn't reply to any of my messages last night." Brandon hesitated, his mind racing. He wanted to tell her the truth, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he muttered, "Sorry, I wasn't feeling great. Just needed some space." Elena wasn't convinced. She stepped past him into the apartment, her sharp eyes scanning the room. The signs were subtle but undeniable: a second glass on the coffee table, a faint whiff of perfume that wasn't hers. Her heart sank as the pieces began to fall into place. "Brandon," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "is there something you're not telling me?" He froze, unable to meet her gaze. Elena's stomach churned as the silence stretched between them. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. She wanted to believe in him, in the trust they'd built, but the evidence was staring her in the face. "Who was here last night?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Brandon's face paled, and in that moment, Elena knew. The truth didn't need to be spoken, it was written all over him. A wave of betrayal washed over her, leaving her stunned, angry, and heartbroken all at once. Brandon stood frozen, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on him. He wanted to deny it, to find some way to salvage the situation, but Elena's piercing gaze left no room for escape. She deserved the truth, even if it shattered her. "It wasn't what it looks like," he began, his voice barely audible. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew how hollow they sounded. Elena's face twisted in a mix of anger and heartbreak. "Then what was it, Brandon? Because it sure looks like you had someone over. While I was working all night worried about you, this is what you were doing." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Brandon felt a lump rise in his throat, but he forced himself to speak. "I messed up," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I was angry. I felt like you didn't care about me being alone while you were out, and I let it get to me." Elena stepped back, as if his words physically pushed her away. "So that's your excuse? You felt insecure, and instead of talking to me, her voice broke, and she couldn't finish the sentence. I wasn't thinking, Brandon said, his hands trembling. It just happened. I hate myself for it. Elena, I really do. I wasn't trying to hurt you. But it was too late. The damage was done. Elena felt a deep, searing pain in her chest as she tried to process his confession. Her mind raced with memories of the time she'd defended him, trusted him, and believed they had something special. And now, it all felt like a cruel joke. I can't do this, she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. I thought we were building something real, Brandon. But this isn't love. Brandon reached out to her, but she stepped away. Don't, she said sharply, tears streaming down her face. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Elena left Brandon's apartment feeling like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. The betrayal was overwhelming, but as she walked back to her car, she realized something else: she deserved better. She deserved someone who wouldn't crumble under insecurity, someone who would communicate instead of retaliating. The days that followed were difficult. Her friends rallied around her, offering comfort and distraction. She threw herself into her project, channeling her emotions into her work. It wasn't easy. There were moments when she wanted to call Brandon, to ask him why he'd done it, to relive the good parts of their relationship. But each time she reminded herself that she deserved more. Brandon tried reaching out, sending her long messages apologizing and begging for another chance. But Elena didn't reply. She knew that trust, once broken, couldn't be easily repaired. His actions had shown her who he truly was, and she wasn't willing to settle for someone who could betray her so easily. Over time, the pain began to fade, replaced by a sense of clarity and self-worth. Elena started focusing on herself, rebuilding her confidence and pursuing her passions. She realized that the relationship, while beautiful in some ways, had also been a lesson, a reminder of what she truly needed in a partner. As the story concludes, it leaves the audience with a powerful message: love is about trust, respect, and communication. And when those things are missing, it's okay to walk away and choose yourself. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever faced a similar situation, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. See you in the next video.